Welcome and thanks for joining me for the Gut Health Turnaround Series 2.0. 21 ways to heal your gut, reclaim your energy, and look and feel amazing. My name is Leah Kline, Health and Wholeness Coach, and I'm your host. Today I'm being joined by Dr. Shiroko
Sokitch.
Sokitch. I'm not getting the S right there. I knew I wasn't quite right. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Today we will be talking about using Chinese medicine to understand and heal your gut. So that will be a different perspective. Now, to give a little background for your information, Shiroko Sokitch, MD, is a doctor who cares about you. Her mission is to help you achieve health, vitality, and happiness you deserve. She does this by using a unique blend of Chinese and Western medicine to help you learn to listen to your body and find out what works for you. In addition to practicing integrative medicine for over 20 years, Dr. Shiroko has hosted public access TV show Perspectives on Healing, still being aired in 3 cities, has a Sonoma County news column, worked as an ER doctor for 10 years, and is writing her 2nd book. The owner of Heart to Heart Medical Center in Santa Rosa, California since 1993, Dr. Shiroko is an expert at using many modalities to bring your body into balance and wholeness. She specializes in acupuncture, chronic illness, pain treatment, hormone balancing, bioidentical hormones, digestive problems, and brain chemistry balancing. So that's a lot of stuff there. So how did you get into what you are doing now?
Well, long story short, when I was 5 years old, my great-grandmother died. And she was my best friend in the world. I had already lost my dad because he left when I was 3. Mm-hmm. And my great-grandmother was the person who took care of me because my mom was a single mom working. And one night she collapsed right in front of me. And about a week later, my mom told me that she had died. And on that day, she told me that her heart had stopped beating. And so I started, much as I was devastated, I was also started to try to imagine how I could solve the problem. Like, how could I make it better? What could I do? And I started imagining how to make her heart beat again. And if there was a machine that could make it work. And I decided on that day that I wanted to be a doctor. But also on that day, it looks like you froze for a second. Sorry.
It froze. Also, the sound continued, so I think we were still good.
And then also on that day, I decided that I wanted to believe in miracles, and I wanted to find solutions to problems, and that has never changed. That's sort of the through thread that has kept me going. And so when I first got an opportunity to save a life was in my 3rd year of medical school as a surgery intern, or as a student in the surgery rotation. Mm-hmm. And somebody came in with a gunshot wound, and I got to help save that person's life. And I was so excited. It was so ecstatic. And so I decided I was going to do surgery. And I went into the residency with, all this excitement. And then within the first year and a half, I began to have some of my own, I had a difficult childhood. So I started to have my first midlife crisis, and so some issues started coming up for me. But there was also the whole that I had patients that even though we were doing the best that we couldn't help them. And that made me nuts. And especially the issue of physical pain, because the medical system, the medical opportunities for healing pain are very minimal. And when somebody's had surgery, or when somebody's been burned or severely injured, pain is a huge issue. And so I was so upset that there was not a good solution. So I read this book called The Web That Has No Weaver, and it's about Chinese medicine. And I just fell in love. And part of that was I was searching for an answer that would help people better. And I was searching for something that would make me feel satisfied in what I was doing. Like I wanted to be achieving results. And even though in surgery you really do get results pretty quickly, you know, you cut on someone, something changes, they don't necessarily get better. And so when I read this book, it was like this, acupuncture that would fit into, like, for me, even though Western medicine is quite a bit different, the Chinese medicine fit in a certain way, like it was a lock and key, and that there was a broader ability to help people. So I left my residency at the end of my second year, and I went to work in the emergency room because I also loved working in the ER. And then I went to acupuncture school. And so while I was working in the ER, I was also going to acupuncture school, which was just wonderful. And then when I finished acupuncture school, I wanted to open a center that provided people with the best Western and Eastern that we could do. So that's what happened.
Okay. So when did you start learning specifically about gut health?
Well, that came pretty early in my acupuncture or in my clinic career because, first of all, I had my own digestive issues, which in retrospect I had since I was a teenager, probably since I was a baby, actually, because in hindsight, you know, you can put things together in hindsight. So I started trying to understand things, and, you know, reps would come to my office and they would teach me about stool testing. And so like over the years, I learned different things and started doing different things to try to understand how people's bodies were functioning from the Western perspective, which is, so taking Chinese medicine as my baseline and then adding Western medicine in to understand things more in a way that I could explain to my patients. Yeah. But in Chinese medicine, the digestive system, of course, is one of the main, you know, you can't get nourished if you can't digest. And so nourishment is an important part of having somebody be well. So it came pretty early in my seeking of understanding.
All right. So tell us how Chinese medicine works.
Well, the whole idea is that you're made up of energy, and energy travels through your body in certain patterns, and it travels vertically so that different organs have different pathways of energy. For example, your large intestine, which is one we'll talk about today, starts at the tip of this finger, and it goes up your arm, like here, and it goes up into your shoulder and up and into your nose, and then through your lungs and into your large intestine internally. So that's one pathway of energy. So energy travels in certain patterns, and when your energy is out of balance, there are problems. So everything is based on getting you into balance. And we use acupuncture and herbs and nutrition and the way we eat and all those things to help get your energy balanced.
Yeah.
So it fits perfectly with integrative Western medicine, using functional medicine sort of as an adjunct to that.
And those pathways are called, in Chinese medicine, meridians, right?
Correct, yes.
For those that are a little more already heard that term, which is around. Yeah. So what is different specifically to the Chinese medicine? You were talking about it, the energetic element. I suppose that's quite a bit of the difference between the Chinese and other modalities.
So, I mean, I guess when I see a client who is having problems, sometimes they may not know their digestion is a problem. And how I diagnose helps me understand what's going on with their body. So using Chinese medicine to diagnose helps me understand what's going on with them. And then I use the Western medicine as an adjunct. But for example, I feel your pulse and I look at your tongue. And when you look at the tongue, you can see how all the different organs are behaving. And quite often the digestion is sort of the main thing you see on the tongue. And then in feeling the pulse, there's a different organ at each position. So on the right-hand side, the lungs and large intestine, the spleen and the stomach and the kidneys and the urinary bladder. And then on the left side, it's the heart and the small intestine, the liver and the gallbladder, and the kidneys and the urinary bladder. The kidneys are so important because they give you energy. And so then when I feel the pulse, I can tell that something's out of balance And when something's out of balance, then I can explain it according to what the person's telling me. So I basically give them feedback and say, so here's what you're telling me. And this is what I find when I feel your pulse and look at your tongue. And so then I explain it according to how the organs work. So in relation to digestion, of course, the lungs and the large intestine are very important because they regulate the immune system. Mm-hmm. And they regulate your ability to protect yourself from things that come in from outside. So mm-hmm. that if you get an infection, basically, it's your immune system that has to handle it first. It's your outermost layer of energy. And then your spleen and your stomach regulate your ability to take in food, to process that food and to turn it into energy, and then to transport it to the rest of your body. And they regulate the strength of your muscles and your ability to concentrate, and the spleen makes the blood. And so if you translate all that into Western medicine, the spleen, as we understand it, also makes blood. So there's one little bit of overlap. But the rest of the functions of the spleen are much more like the functions of the pancreas, as we understand it. But so when I feel someone's pulse and I find that their immune system and their spleen are out of balance, then I explain how to get them into balance and what it takes to get into balance. And then, if it's their immune system, then I'll look for an infection or a cause of what's going on that's causing that problem, the root cause of the problem, and then we'll work on treating it.
Mm-hmm. So with gut health, how do you address that with the Chinese medicine? You were talking about that some.
Yeah. Well, so first of all, a very, very extensive history, looking at how a person eats, how they, what they eat, when they eat, how do they feel after they eat, like all of the things that you would think of. And what has been their life history, what happened when they were kids, were they breastfed, were they, all those kinds of things are important. Even in Chinese medicine, even how your parents were when they conceived you is important because it sets up the root of your energy, like the source of your energy. So all of those things are questioned, what they eat, what time they eat, and then what happens with their digestion. Do they get gassy and bloated? Do they have regular bowel movements? Do they, get sleepy after they eat? And all of those things play into how I look at things. And then when I feel the pulse and look at the tongue, I get the information. Is it in their immune system? Is it in their stomach or spleen? And even if it's in their heart meridian, that could be the small intestine. And there are digestive problems that can occur with the small intestine as well. And even the liver and gallbladder play a role, so the liver and gallbladder regulate the smooth flow of energy in the whole body. And so a person who tends to get really gassy and bloated and their belly gets real tight, that is often not a problem necessarily with the spleen and the stomach, but the liver and gallbladder acting on top of the spleen and stomach and causing irritation. And so that would be an energy flow sort of problem. So depending on what I find, I proceed to investigate further. So let's say this person had a weak digestion from the spleen and the stomach perspective. And this is something that is not so common in Western medicine, but I find really makes a difference. Is one of the things that people think is really healthy is eating a lot of salads and eating a lot of raw food. But if you have a weak stomach or a weak spleen, you can't digest those foods. And so then you'll get gassy and bloated just from eating salad. And I've had so many patients over the years that's all we change is say, stop eating raw food. Because their stomach is weak and it can't tolerate it. And, a lot of, in our modern society, people are always in a hurry and they're always on the run and they're always on the go. And all those things make a difference too in how you digest your food. So it's really taking you back to really basic things. And that's how I always start, is to take a person back to the very basics. Don't skip breakfast. Make sure that you chew your food well. Make sure that you are relaxed when you eat, things like that. If you have a weak spleen and stomach, don't eat raw salads for now. That it may not be forever. We want to build up that energy. We want to build up the digestive energy. But some people just can't tolerate those foods. And that's something that we were not taught, in our Western medical education, is that whole idea of hot food versus cold food, or versus, honoring your body's ability to process things.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, the most of the time it's kind of just, eat and it comes out the other end, and then they don't really talk about anything about what to do, how all these different things affected. Serious lack of education in that department.
Well, I mean, in medical school, my education was, I was lucky to know that there were proteins, fats, and carbohydrates, and that's all you had. You had to just make sure you had a balance of those things. You needed more protein, more carbohydrates than proteins and fat, and it was calories in versus calories out. And that was the process for all the years that I studied medicine. But in acupuncture school, it actually mattered what you ate and the energy of the food. I mean, and it's one of the things that I love about Chinese medicine is this whole idea that everything has energy.
Yeah.
So in ancient times, and I don't know that they still do this, but it would matter if you ate meat, it would matter where the meat was grown. Mm-hmm. There were places where they fed cattle certain kinds of grasses or certain kinds of herbs. And then that would have influenced the quality of the meat so that would be a healing thing for the person. Mm-hmm. We don't do that now. We mass produce animals, we mass produce food, mm-hmm. So it's so much different than.
Well, that's kind of one of the interesting things that could be going on kind of back behind this, organic versus non-organic, grass-fed versus, grain-fed and stuff, feedlot, thing on meat that we're getting into is some of that could be that, it's just energetically not helpful for us to eat those, kinds of foods. So,
right.
Could be another angle. Who knows? So what's your approach with patients with gut issues as far as kind of where you start?
Well, again, with a very thorough history about what's going on with them. And then quite often I'll do a stool test, trying to look at how they digest food and what's going on with their digestion. Mm-hmm. There are special labs that do testing that will look at not just what bacteria, parasites, or yeast there are, but they'll also look at, are you absorbing what you eat? Do you digest what you eat?
Yeah.
And are there inflammation tissues in your guts, all those things. And then that helps me create a plan. And of course, I always start with diet, and depending on what they're eating, I try to eliminate foods that they might be reacting to, and then try to get them to eat a lot of healthy stuff and vegetables and, organic grass-fed meats and things like that. And sometimes you have to go slowly depending on where a person is. It's one of the most difficult things I've experienced in my many years of doing what I do is getting people to change how they eat.
Yeah.
I've had people literally be willing to die in order to not change how they eat.
You're going, okay, reality check here, folks.
Yeah. I mean, I remember a guy who was in his 70s when he came to me, but he was such a nice man, but he was diabetic and he was overweight and he had heart disease and he did not want to give up eating his, morning donut and his cups of coffee and he loved rich food and so he did not want to change it. And he said, I'll do anything you say, but don't make me change how I eat. And then,
at which point you're going, okay, well, I'm sorry, but I am very limited on what I can do here.
Well, you can actually do a good amount, and so rather than what I try to do with people is rather than take away foods that people love, I try to add foods that will make them more healthy. So it's kind of a adding rather than a subtracting thing. And I had to do this with myself. I love sugar. And if I could continue to eat my morning, I don't like donuts, but I like Cinnabons. And, if I had been able to continue to eat that, I would love that, but it caused too many problems for me. But what I do is, if you crave a food or if there's a food you just really can't give up, eat all the other stuff I tell you to eat first. So eat a little piece of organic grass-fed meat, have a pile of vegetables, and then save that thing that you love so much for last.
Mm-hmm.
And then eat this, and then wait, and then see how you feel, and then eat this thing.
Yeah.
Right? And so that way they don't have to give it up.
Mm-hmm.
And they get to listen to what's happening to their body so that they can start to feel better. Mm-hmm. At the same time that they may start not wanting this thing. And that's kind of what happens, is if you really fill up on good food, you start to not want these things. You know, so like it happens. It happened to me, yay. And that's how I had to learn it, you know, because,
well,
so I had to teach myself.
If you're delaying eating that until last, you don't have all the biochemical things going on with the sugar in there telling you need to eat. You filled up on the stuff that's going to say, you're full now. You're fine. Do that first. That makes a lot of sense. All right. So what other factors play a role in gut health from a Chinese medicine point of view?
Well, this is both Chinese and Western medicine, really. It's all about balance, right? So all the other organs play a role. So like I already mentioned, the liver and the gallbladder. Yeah. In Chinese medicine, the liver regulates the smooth flow of energy in the whole body. And it deals with the emotion of anger. It regulates your menstrual cycle. So if you have a lot of PMS and things like that, that's a liver imbalance from the Chinese perspective. But more importantly, it is it's the stress and the emotional component that affects your digestion. And everybody will tell you that when they eat, when they're stressed, they don't digest as well. So that is an important part, both Western and Chinese. And the liver regulates stress or deals with stress. And then the other issue is hormones, you know, and the kidneys regulate most of your hormones. So your adrenals and the stress response hormones are regulated by the kidneys. And so when a person has been sick for a long time, or they're not feeling well for a long time, then these other systems start to go out of balance. And what I have found in my many years is, let's say I saw somebody who had digestive problems, and maybe they've had digestive problems for years, but over the years they've gotten more and more fatigued. And if I start to just try to kill, let's say they had an infection or something, or a parasite, I try to kill the parasite or kill the bacteria, and I don't deal with the rest of like the balance, they're not going to do well. Mm-hmm. So their hormones, so I make it a triangle of blending both, but your hormones, your nervous system, and your immune system sort of as a triangle that have to be in balance in order for the body to begin to heal. Mm-hmm. So if you don't have enough hormones, if your immune system's not working, if your nervous system isn't helping, you're not going to get well. Yeah. And so I can I've done this. I have a really good success with ulcerative colitis with working with people, because I look for the root cause, and like 90% of the time, the root cause is an infection. Mm-hmm. And it's actually one of my clients that I've been taking care of for a few years, who came in who was severe trouble. You know, he was underweight, he was anemic, he was really tired, and he was bleeding every day, because even on the medication for ulcerative colitis. And if you looked at when they did his colonoscopy, his colon was in terrible shape, all red and inflamed. And so I looked for the infection, and I treated the infection. And he got a little better, but he didn't get a lot better. So then I started looking for the triangle. Like, okay, what's up with your hormones? Well, he was low in testosterone. What's up with his nervous system? His serotonin levels were low. His GABA levels were low. You know, so like brain chemistry was out of balance. Mm-hmm. And his immune system wasn't functioning right. So I started working on that, and he got 85% better. Mm-hmm. Because I gave him a structure for his body to heal from. And when he had his next colonoscopy, it was a year after I started seeing him, it was 85% better. Like, there was very little inflammation. And that, for him, he was a very scientific guy. For him, that was proof. Yeah. That, you know, because you could see the difference. You went from a really almost, you know, shredded colon to an almost normal looking colon in a year. So, but it wasn't just killing the infection. It was balancing his whole body and getting him more and more and more to a place where his body healed.
Yeah, so it's like everything affects everything else.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's not one isolated issue, and that's part of the reason the whole
Yeah.
treating the symptom doesn't really work, is because there's stuff going on all over the place. It's not just one place.
Right. You got to find the underlying cause. And years, I started acupuncture school in the 1980s. So I was the only physician in the state of Washington at the time studying that. And, a lot of people thought I was a little bit nuts, and functional medicine didn't exist. And a lot of that testing that I'm talking about wasn't as available as it is today. I mean, science has changed a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But I had Chinese medicine as a tool for when I didn't understand things. And I was able to start to look at people on a whole person level with a scientific tool, which I consider Chinese medicine to be very scientific, that would allow me to figure out how to get people balanced. And then as I went on in my practice, I began to use the functional medicine and the different kinds of testing to understand better what was going on so that I could then target my treatment more specifically. But it was always been get the whole body balanced.
Mm-hmm. All right. So how can Chinese medicine be used to understand our bodies better?
Well, because when I explain to you, and it's on my website so a person can go look, but I can explain like this organ is out of balance. Mm-hmm. So let's say the spleen and the stomach are out of balance. So the things that the spleen and the stomach rule are the strength of your muscles, your ability to concentrate, they make the blood, they help you take food and transform food into energy so that you're receiving of food and you're transforming it into energy. But let's say you have trouble with your muscles and you feel weak all the time, or you can't concentrate, you can't focus. Then you can begin to understand, oh, that's a digestive problem. Mm-hmm. So that you can, basically Chinese medicine gives you keys because there's a wide list of symptoms for each organ. Mm-hmm. Then you know which organ's out of balance. And my patients who have known me for years, they can now go, oh, I looked at my tongue the other day and I can see that my lungs are out of balance. Or, of course they may have symptoms in their lungs, so that makes it more easy to understand. But they also have been able to translate it and to start to understand what's going on with them and sort of self-diagnose and they'll come in and say, oh yeah, I noticed this and this and this, so that's, mm-hmm. So that's how they can use it. And you could look at my website and there's a whole description of how each organ works. And then that helps you look at how your body is functioning. And then there's another thing that I add onto it, which is a little bit more complex. And one of the books I'm writing is about that. But so the meridians travel like this, mm-hmm. and they cover your whole body. So if you look, let's say you had a symptom right here on the inside of your elbow. Let's say you had a pain right there. That is your heart meridian. And the heart rules all of the emotions. It's the emperor, and it helps you sleep, and it helps regulate, of course, your physical heart, but it also deals with all the emotions and joy and sleep. And so let's say you had a pain here and it was on your heart meridian. Well, you might be experiencing some kind of stress in your emotions in some way. Mm-hmm. So things like that can help you understand from an emotional and physical and spiritual level how your body's functioning and what is going on with that. So the meridians travel horizontally and the chakras travel vertically. Sorry. Meridians travel vertically. Chakras travel horizontally. And each chakra has emotional and spiritual and physical functions as well. And so then when you understand the chakras and you understand the meridians, you can kind of begin to see what symptoms mean and how they might be affecting you. Mm.
Yeah, well, I've learned some about this, but there is so much to learn about Chinese medicine. There's lots of information out there, and there's a lot of stuff that's very different than what we're used to. And that can be a good thing because you can learn all sorts of new things that you didn't know before. And you want to tell us about your free giveaway for our listeners?
Sure. So one of the things that I do a lot with people, of course, is give them supplements in order to help them heal. And, there's a lot of controversy about supplements. There's people talking that they're bad for you or that they may not do anything. And I think it's important to me that people understand that there's several things about supplements. One is, of course, if you take bad supplements, they're not going to work.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of bad supplements. There are a lot of snake oil salesmen out there, but there are some good supplements. And there are things that will help people feel better and function better. And so I wrote a little book called Supplement Smart, and how to tell what is good and what is bad. And basically talking about the added ingredients and what ingredients to look for. And so sort of a primer on how to really find what's right for you. So
excellent.
That's what the gift is. But there's another gift on my webpage as well, and that takes you to the webpage, and that is an intro to my book. And my book that I'm writing right now is called 7 Keys to Accelerated Healing. And that is how to heal no matter what you have, and sort of taking certain tools on an emotional, spiritual, and physical level to help you get to a place where you can heal. And that's
good.
Also there.
So. All right, that's great information. And this is all at hearttoheartmedicalcenter.com/blog/. And of course, we will be linking to this on the speaker page. And it will be up the entire, time of the summit. So you have a shortcut to get there. But you can also, just go to her blog. And so if somebody wants to connect with you and learn more, they would just go to your website, I assume.
Yeah, everything that you need is there. Yeah.
So that was the hearttoheartmedicalcenter.com. So thank you so much, Dr. Shiroko, for joining me today. That was a lot of great information.
Thank you. It was fun talking to you. Yes.
And thanks everyone for listening, and come back tomorrow for more of the Gut Health Turnaround series.